he was saying. But here was the first recorded words of Adam. When he saw it, he said, "This is the bone of my bone. And this is the flesh of my flesh." Why? Because she is half of me. She shall be called woman because she was taken out of man. The very essence of woman is from man. In fact, if you read this in Hebrew, it says something like this: she shall be called Isa because she has taken from Is. The Jews would pick that up. They're similar. And even in the naming of it, she was not called name Eve. She was called woman. There is a man. She came from man. That's why she was called woman. Not just Eve, but woman. And when Adam saw Eve and said, "This is the bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh," he was saying, she is made of the same stuff. We're similar. We're identical. She's the other part of me. She's my other half. Face to face. He could relate to her. Verse 24. It says, "For this cause a man shall leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave to his wife, and they shall become one flesh." Ang galing, no? They shall become one flesh again. Because Adam's half was taken out of him. And when they get married, they become what? One flesh again. Because the other half now is joining back. It is for this reason that a woman will be a helper to Adam. That is suitable for him. That is compatible for him. That is like him. Because Eve was made also in the image and likeness of God. Not a monkey, not an ostrich, not a snake, not a bull, but Eve was made in the image and likeness of God. That's why the bloodline that we have, that's why the flesh line trumps the bloodline. That's why husband and wife, they live and cleave. The bloodline, the loyalty will change from the bloodline to the flesh line because they will become one again. Go to 1 Corinthians, please. 1 Corinthians chapter 11. 1 Corinthians chapter 11 verse 11 says, however in the Lord, neither is the woman independent of man, nor is a man independent of woman. Both of them are dependent on one another because both of them are halves of a whole. And husband and wife, they need one another. The wholeness, the oneness. Verse 25 says, "And the man and the woman were both naked, and they were not ashamed." They were naive still. And we will explore this as we go in Genesis chapter 3. Now, having understood what Eve was, where she came from, and what was her purpose. She came from Adam, half of it. Adam was not complete anymore. He needed his other half. That's why when Eve came along and cleave, both of them cleave, lead and cleave to each other, they became one. One in fulfilling the blessings of God to be fruitful and to multiply. One in ruling and subduing the world. And one in worshiping, serving, and obeying God. Now the question is this: is that the only purpose of Eve? Is that the only purpose of marriage? I submit not. Let's tie this in with the New Testament. And as I was saying, I will only touch this in brief because marriage really is a really long series of topics. So what is really the purpose of Eve? What is the purpose of marriage? What is its deepest, corest reason for being? Is it simply because man was alone? This is the mystery. Was it simply for Eve to help man to be fruitful and multiply? I have a question. Why did God create sheep? And sometimes, and we see, what is the purpose for God creating sheep? Well, the purpose, I submit, the purpose of God creating sheep specifically is in order for man to realize how he is and how he behaves. When Jesus used a sheep as an illustration, it was not incidental, it was designed from the beginning. That this sheep would have an eternal function. For man to one day realize that he is like a sheep, always wandering, who needs a shepherd. It was not incidental, it had a purpose. Now the question is, what is the significance and purpose of Eve, of marriage? Go to Ephesians chapter 5. Again, I will not expose everything there, but just drive on what I believe is the main point. Ephesians chapter 5, verse 25. Husbands, love your wife just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. He gave everything that he has. Not just money, not just time, but his whole. So that, for what purpose? That he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word. Verse 27. That he might present to himself the church in all her glory, having no spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that she would be holy and blameless. 28. So husband ought also to love their own wives. Husbands, we are to do the same thing. Giving up ourselves totally for the purpose of sanctifying our wife, So husbands ought to love their own wives as their own body. Interesting, right? So husband ought to love their own wife as their own body. He who loves his own wife loves himself. Sound. Why? Because they are one. Why? Because Eve was half of Adam. For no one hated his own flesh. She is bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it just as Christ also does the church, because we are members of his body. Then he quotes back Genesis chapter 2. For this reason a man shall leave his father and mother and shall be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. Verse 32. This mystery is great. There was a mystery in Genesis chapter 2. The real reason and the real purpose of marriage has been kept a mystery till this time. Verse 32. This mystery is great, but I am speaking with reference to Christ and the church. In another version it says, this is a great mystery, but it is an illustration of the way Christ and the church are one. What then is the purpose of marriage? As Christ is Adam, and as the woman is the church. The church, Christ showed his love for what? The church. What did Christ do? He gave himself up. He sacrificed himself. He loved her till the very end. That's what Christ did for that church. The woman was built not just for procreation, not just for man to help man in subduing and ruling, not just for cultivating and keeping. Marriage was instituted by God for marriage to be exhibit A. Marriage is an exhibit A of God. It is for the world to see how great the love of Christ is for the world. That is the purpose of marriage. As much as Christ sacrificed and gave, and as much as the church is expected to submit to Christ, so too the marriage. Our marriage should reflect the love of Christ towards the church. That is the truth that was not revealed in Genesis. But there we saw the foundation that Adam, Is and Isa were one. They were united. Marriage should be a portrait of the covenantal love, of the faithfulness of Christ to the church. You want to see how much Christ loves the church? Christ says, look at the marriages of Christian families. That is how much Christ loves the church. And you know how much does the church loves